Are you a thoughtful leader? Maybe you are. Maybe you think you are. Let's find out. I'm Mindy Gibbins-Klein. I'm author of The Thoughtful Leader and host of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. Thoughtful leadership is all about thought leadership that goes above and beyond. Thought leadership that is truly new and original, exciting, disruptive, maybe even groundbreaking. Because let's face it, we need to raise the bar. My guests and I are absolutely obsessed with finding truly original thought leadership, and I'm going to bring you so many exciting ideas and opportunities, things for you to think about, and chances for you to push your thinking that you'll be very glad you tuned in. So thanks so much for checking out Thoughtful Leadership and the Thoughtful Leader podcast. I look forward to connecting with you very, very soon. Welcome to the show. My guest today is the amazing thoughtful leader, Penny Power, OBE. Penny, hi.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here with you, Mindy.
Oh my goodness, thoughtful leadership. We've had a few thoughtful leadership discussions, and you've spoken at our conferences, and this is definitely something that I know is important to you as well as us. So tell us what thoughtful leadership means to you.
Well, I think it's a wonderful way, that the angle that you're taking on this, because I mean, over the last 23 years of the online world that I've witnessed, a lot of people call themselves thought leaders. They used to call themselves sort of gurus, and they now say that they're a thought leader. But I think the full bit is the really critical thing. And to me, it really is about what is driving you. So I can witness quite a lot of people online that are driven more by their own fame and their own voice and their own brand to be known, to be famous and to make money. And I'm not saying that, I'm not going to judge that, but certainly when I think about a thoughtful leader, is someone who is driven by something much deeper, much more about the impact on the other person. And their message to the world, the way they build their brand, the way they communicate is more about the other person than themselves.
Yeah, and this, you walk your talk in this area, so I'm allowed to say that you're a shining example of this. I may say it to many people, but only if they really are.
Okay.
And that's your values coming out. So tell us about your values and what you're passionate about.
Well, I love business. I have to say that, but I think I am one of those people, even though I went into business at 19 and I had a very successful career in employment and building my career in the IT industry up to sales director. I've always been very passionate about the impact that I might have on another person. And, even through school, through having a family, a big family, I was one of four, I was the youngest. For me, I was always highly sensitive to environments and what impact my words could or couldn't have on people. So that emotional drivers has always been with me, and which is why when I was growing up, I never thought I'd go into business, because business to me seemed like a place where that didn't matter. When I observed it as a young person, I sort of thought that anybody that went into a caring profession was like that, and anybody who went into business wasn't like that. And maybe, growing up through the 70s and witnessing stuff in the 80s, maybe that was to a certain extent true. I'm very, very driven to connect people and to create an environment for people to really feel they matter and that they're acknowledged and that they're heard, and that in a way, I suppose, that their brand becomes known for the right reasons and it nurtures them. And I think being acknowledged is a really important thing to me, for me to give to other people. And I remember I was very young, I was only about 23, and somebody observed me and said, you always make anybody in business feel like they are important. And I genuinely, it's not a game I play, I genuinely love people and feel that they are so incredible when you get to know someone and when you create an environment where they open up a bit more. So I love what people do, the expertise they have, but I love who they are, and that is what drives me in life.
Oh my goodness, and I have witnessed that firsthand, and we have known each other about 20 years. I think we figured that out It's incredible in this day and age, fast-paced, digital, that you still prioritize and I think achieve that goal of making people feel important, special, heard. It is a real gift. So thank you so much for sharing that with the listeners.
Yeah, I mean, what I would add to this, Mindy, is, we went into I would say I had 4 or 5 wilderness years where I was in fear. I was recovering from the loss of our very special business, trying to find my identity, worrying a lot about money. And they were really unhappy years. And I would say that the unhappiest part of it was that my drivers shifted, that I wasn't living my values as much as I feel I can again now. But I think that's why I don't like to judge people, because I think so many people, when they're trying to feed their family and their self-worth has been reduced for whatever reasons, they can forget what their core values are and get driven by something that isn't really them. And I definitely know that I left back over a few years where I was not congruent with myself. And I think people might be listening to this and feel they're in that stage. And I would never judge them for that. But I would also request that they start to try and get back to their values, because as soon as they do and they start to properly connect with others, their life will become much richer from that.
Thank you very much for sharing from the heart. That's what we have come to know about you, Penny. And I think your sharing gives other people permission. Thoughtful leadership, as you know, is about being self-aware and reflecting and deciding to play a bigger game in terms of being a better person. Not the fame and all the stuff we were talking about, but the bigger game is really about being vulnerable, admitting where maybe you haven't got it right, and vowing to do something about it. It's a choice, of course. Thoughtful leadership is definitely a choice. It's not easy, and thank you for sharing about the wilderness years. What a great phrase, and how you pulled yourself out of it. So what would you say is the biggest mistake you've ever made, and how did it work out okay?
Well, I would say my biggest mistake is when I started chasing the dollar, and I forgive myself for it. And I think that there was a very good reason for that. After Ecademy, when we started Ecademy, which, just for anybody that doesn't know me, we started that in 98, and that was the first social network for business. My drivers to start that was not about becoming, at the time, a globally recognized entrepreneur. It was genuinely, oh gosh, there's MySpace and there's Friends United, but there's nowhere for business people to be friends online. And I was at home with 3 children. Thomas was my breadwinner. I'd stepped away from the business world, and I wanted to go back to my core values of connecting people and loving people and caring for people. And I didn't know whether there were going to be 10 people in the group or more. So we were driven at the beginning of that by the real values that I hold again today. What happened was we got investors. We were going to go on the stock market. We had to put £750,000 at that point into the business, gaining more investment. We got onto that conveyor belt that I think a lot of entrepreneurs, when they come up with a good idea, can have. And let me tell you this, when you come up with a good idea, investors will come towards you, and you start, your ego and your own ambitions start getting triggered, and you start thinking, this is incredible. And oh, wow, if I take on this investor and I build this big business, I'm going to have even more impact. But then I went into a world that I call my accidental entrepreneur years, where it was fear. It was driven by managing a machine. I wasn't able to have beautiful conversations like I can have with you now. It was just extreme. And then at the end of that 14 years, having sacrificed so much, we got left with millions of debt for Thomas and I to clear up, and our integrity wouldn't allow us to go bankrupt. I think I would feel as strong about my skills in business if I had chosen to opt out of paying that money back to the credit card companies, of which there were 140. So, but I have to forgive myself for the fact that then when that happened, I'm in scarcity. My thoughtful leadership stuff was still inside, embedded in me, but my drivers were, how am I going to keep educating our children? How are we going to keep a roof over our head? How are we going to pay this debt? So you start chasing the dollar, and it's horrible. And you go into scarcity, and you also fear spending any money on anything, and what we know, truly I know from working with you, Mindy, is any investment I've made in you, for example, even when it was quite tough to make it, I got that back hundredfold, you know. And I can think about the coaching you gave me and publishing the book and taking that time out to write it. It was scary, you know, that we weren't in a strong position. Even 3 years ago, we were still working it through. And that dollar, that money is the subject you wake up with, you go to sleep with. How am I going to pay stuff? How am I ever going to grow as a person if I can't invest in myself? And it just becomes an overriding fear. And you become time scarce and financially scarce. And when you take yourself into scarcity, that is just an awful place to be. And that's one place that I really want to support people around. Now, the community I'm building now through BIP100, people aren't in that scarcity place because you're in a different growth mode when you've come out of it. But they'll all have had their own journeys of that. So if you asked me what's the biggest mistake, it is just not trusting that my values and my brand and my thoughtful leadership would get me through. I suppose that would be it.
Yeah, sure. I think a lot of the listeners will relate to what you're saying. It'll resonate because, you know, generally, if we are caring people, if we're thoughtful people, we do acknowledge where we got it wrong. But I wouldn't say it was a mistake to want to feed your family. Yeah. Perhaps, you know, now with hindsight, you can see that, you know, you let that scarcity drive your decisions, but still, I really don't know what other choice you would have had at that time. I mean, if you were to talk to yourself from 5, 6, 7 years ago, what advice would you give yourself?
I would give myself healing time, but again, that's hindsight. Yeah. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, by the very fact that they're, you know, solopreneur, entrepreneur, whatever they want to call themselves, they have independent traits. And I have very independent trait, which means I found it very hard to ask for help. Yeah. So I would have asked for help earlier. I would have been more open about my vulnerabilities to a few people. You know, there was this issue, which we all have our identity, and I had an identity in the market. And then we have our truth. And that gap between that identity and that truth is where all the solutions lie. But you hold on to your identity because you fear your truth. And you fear everybody understanding the truth, because what will that mean? And it's very interesting times now, because now, you know, when Thomas and I were going through bad times, everybody was going through great times.
Everybody?
Well, you know, there was a lot of growth in the market. The markets were growing. Things were not bad, you know. Certainly in our world, this world of social networking, and Facebook is growing, LinkedIn's growing, Twitter's growing, things are growing. And so, you know, we sort of stepped out of a growth world because we were just too early to market with it. So if I look back, I would take time to heal. I often say I wish, and I don't think it's ever too late, I would love to have a wake for Ecademy. Look how many people miss Ecademy, and we never created a full stop to it. And it was Hannah about 3.5, 4 years ago said, Mum, you've got to stop identifying yourself with Ecademy because it's gone. And of course, I'll identify myself with the fact that it was trailblazing and beautiful, but identifying myself as a failure or whatever it was not good. So what happened after Ecademy, and a lot of people might have experience this, is a business comes to an end, a relationship with a client comes to an end, whatever it is that's pretty catastrophic, right, for your business comes to an end. You then can, in scarcity, again, that word, leap into something without the right reasons. So I created this beautiful business called Digital Youth Academy. It was really as an overlap when Ecademy was obviously going. We brought that to market. It was on the back of the Digital Business Spirit Manifesto that I wrote, which was a thought leadership post, a thought leadership project. And in that manifesto, which the government supported, was a lot about skills. And there were a real dearth of digital skills, as there still are. But, you know, back in 2011, it was really prevalent. And I thought, well, let's create an apprenticeship in digital marketing. And there wasn't one. So it was another trailblazing idea, and a pretty bloody awesome one, I have to say. And it, you know, took me into a new sector, which was very interesting, because I think we should refresh our networks. It took me into the skills sector, further education colleges, the Department of Education, the Department of Welfare and Pensions. It was really quite phenomenal.
You were honoured by the Queen for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was noticed doing that, but actually the honour was for Ecademy, which is really interesting around,
really?
Isn't it? Yeah, the citation was for Ecademy. But the mistake I made was the first investor that came towards me, I grabbed that person and they were completely wrong. And that was a catastrophic mistake that I could have a real sliding doors moment. If I hadn't chosen that, that was done in scarcity. So how many of us grab a client in scarcity, grab a collaboration project in scarcity without really looking at the shared values and the shared vision and all of those things? So that was a very big mistake that I made. The business, it was beautiful. We exited it in the end, and then we...
Sure. Oh my goodness. I just want to pick up on one thing you said about having a wake or some kind of closure or celebration of Ecademy. And something that I'm not sure I totally agree with is where you said it was gone. Just like when a loved one passes away, they're not really gone. I mean, spiritual people probably believe they're not gone at all, talking to you. So if we look at it that way and we say the spirit is still here, it is possible, not only possible, but probably a great idea. And I would love to go to some kind of celebration, probably online nowadays, but let's chat about that, because we all do need closure. And you as the founder, maybe you're finally ready for that.
Yeah, that would be beautiful. It would. And it is, you're absolutely right. The spirit of it and the culture of it lives on, because people who learnt social media or social networking, and I do differentiate the two. You've got social networking, you've got social media. We learnt social networking.
Yes.
Very different to broadcast media. And those people contact us a lot and say that their foundations of their network and the way that they connect with people are from those days, which is beautiful.
Well, look, I really think about Ecademy all the time. It's where I built not just my network, but I built my awareness of how to meet more people, and not just on a local basis. I put myself out of it. I spoke at some of the groups. I attended as many meetings as I could, in venues, and also the blogging and the connecting online. It was a really, really great blend. It allowed me to explore and to build my brand. And I'm sure the listeners won't mind me indulging just for a moment, but it was at Ecademy where I met the late, great Alan Ray. And Alan, who sadly passed away this year, he was a good friend and very smart. And I said, I'm doing all this book coaching, and I pull the book out of them like a midwife, the book Midwife. And he got so excited, we both did, and the wine spilled on the floor at the Marriott Hotel. And Alan said, "You trademark that. That is brilliant." And I did, and we've never looked back. I mean, the book Midwife brand probably wouldn't exist if it hadn't been for Ellen, and I would not have met Ellen if it hadn't been for Ecademy. So you never know the effect, the ripple effect and everything.
That's very true, and you really exemplify an Ecademy member and someone who connected deeply with people. And I think going back to your thoughtful leader thing, I think so many people are in a rush to build brands and use automated systems and hands-off attitude. And there is nothing more than building your social capital around true connections. And I would say that over and over again, it's my...
so say it again then, please, so the listeners can hear you.
Over and over again, social capital is what saved my ass, because I have built, if I look at the brands, Ecademy, Digital Youth Academy, the Business Cafe, now Business is Personal, it's been the consistency of penny power and the values that I have that has maintained that rolling through all the time for me to be able to keep the same connections going through and add to them. And, I think this thoughtful leader has conversations, has proper deep conversations, doesn't just broadcast. And we know when we see a speaker how nauseating it is when you see a speaker come on stage and it's like they just press a button and they just go. And it's the same speech. They're not resonating, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's the same online. You have to be present and thoughtful about the way you connect.
Well, as I said a few minutes ago, it's a choice, and some people choose to continue broadcasting. It works for them in whatever way it works in their life. Good. I think we're attracting, you and me and the podcast and all our brands are attracting the kind of people who really want to do more than that. So that connection is key. And speaking of connection, we just have time for one more thing, which is to help the listeners understand what's the best way for people to find you and connect with you.
Well, that's lovely. Well, in Thomas's words, I'm open, random, and supportive. ORS. I find that random my only challenge, but on my website, pennypower.co.uk. But I am luckily got my name across LinkedIn and Facebook. And if you Google it, and I really am open. I've joined Clubhouse now. My WhatsApp number's around the place. So if you really want to talk to me, you'll certainly find a way, which would be really lovely.
Yeah, so Penny Power, please connect with her. As you see, she is willing to connect with you, and we always have room for more thoughtful connections. So I just want to thank you again for being part of this podcast. And we will see you soon on any number of platforms. Take care, Penny. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Thoughtful Leader, and I hope it's inspired you to be more thoughtful as a leader in your business. Please consider subscribing and leaving a review. An important question for you. Do you want to create a culture of thought leadership in your organization? My best-selling book, The Thoughtful Leader, is available now on Amazon and many other sites in paperback, ebook, and audiobook formats. Please visit www.mindygk.com for more great content. That's www.mindygk.com. Speak to you again soon.